I don't know if you've seen the new All Souls Parents Network newsletter or not. Actually, I had a copy I was going to hold up, but I think someone got so excited they stole the one from the pulpit after the last service. I must have talked it up so well that they decided they needed to have it. But you can just imagine a beautiful four-color newsletter that's been crafted by a couple of moms who are part of this church, working with Shannon Boston, our children's religious educator. And they put this together to help us to expand our programming and our communication with families and of course, their children. It's based on the monthly themes that we have here at the church. And in September, our theme is calling or vocation. And so this newsletter is filled with great information for parents to help them to talk to their children about the theme. It offers tips. It tells about programs and activities that families can do together. So if you have a child, if you're part of a family or know somebody who is that you think would be interested in it, please pick one up. I know there's some in the hallway, or there were, and more down in the children's wing of the church. It's called the Parents Network Newsletter. Now, on the back cover of the newsletter, it has this section that's called the Translator, and underneath it is one called Playground Ready, Little Answers to Big Questions. Now, I love this. They came up with this because we live in a place where our children are often confronted with theological questions on the playground by other children. Are you saved? They get asked while suspended upside down on the jungle gym. Have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart? Is a conversation in the sandbox in elementary school here in Oklahoma. Now, back in Boston, where I moved here from, it's more common for kids to ask each other, what college do you plan to attend? But here in Oklahoma, they ask you, what church do you attend? And, of course, the subtext is, what afterlife do you plan to attend? Now, you can imagine our 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds explaining that they go to All Souls. You know, sometimes that's enough to end the conversation. The other child, right? The other child doesn't know anything about All Souls, but is just happy to know that their friend goes to church. However, other times the question is followed up by, well, what do you teach and what do you believe at All Souls? And when you grow up in a church that's as inclusive as this one, it can be hard for a child to explain. It can be hard for adults to explain sometimes. And especially when you're dangling upside down from the monkey bars. So in this little section called Playground Ready, Little Answers to Big Questions, they address this predicament so that moms and dads can help their children avoid being told by their peers in elementary school that they're going to burn in hell. So the Parents News Network suggests that when asked, what does your church believe? That our children can reply, we believe there's one God and all are saved. Now, 9 times out of 10, the response will be okay. And they move on to more important questions like, could you pass me that plastic shovel? But occasionally, there's a more tenacious toddler, a more persistent playmate who says, but only people who accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior are saved. To which our children can say, that's not what we believe in my church. And that often ends the discussion, or at least suspends it until 5th grade. If nothing else, it gives a simple and honest answer to a complicated question. Now, the newsletter knows that parents who bring their children to All Souls will have more complicated questions of their own that they'll want to ask. What do you mean by one God? To which we could say that for the purpose of keeping things at an elementary level, one God refers to the belief that there is one source of all existence. It's known by many names, but for our young children in these situations, the best name is God. Now, of course, we adults can stay up all night discussing the nature and the name of that one source. And here at All Souls, there are at least as many ideas about the source of our existence as there are brands of cars in the parking lot. But whether you're a scientific rationalist, agnostic, or a God-fearing theist, we all agree that we were created by a single and universal source. We can debate the nature of that source and the names, but we all agree that there is only and can only be one. Now, the newsletter, of course, is much more succinct than I'm being. They fit all this information into a little box about the size of a graham cracker. But the newsletter knows that the next question that an All Souls parent is going to ask is, now, when you say all are saved, what do you mean by saved? To which the translator says, saved is to be good with God. To be good with God, and we believe that all children are born good with God. Therefore, the answer to the question, are you saved, is yes. And that is the answer that All Souls children have been giving on Tulsa playgrounds for generations. So far, we've been talking about these concepts from the position of a parent talking to a child or two children talking to each other. And from that standpoint, the answer, one God and all are saved, is about as succinct and accurate as you can get for children who, by their very nature, are concrete in their thinking. Of course, for us adults, we can think a little bit more abstractly. So let's talk about a metaphor that I borrow from my colleague, Dr. Forrest Church at All Souls in New York City. He tells us to imagine the world as if it were an enormous cathedral. One of those ancient cathedrals in which there are innumerable smaller chapels and transepts and altars and shrines all throughout it. And each section of the cathedral has its own unique stained glass window. And each section has its own group of worshipers that stand before that stained glass window. Some of the chapels are large, with millions of people facing their window, and others are tiny, with just a few people. But each set of windows is illuminated by the same sun. Dr. Church describes the windows in the cathedral of the world as representing the many religions that exist here on earth, each a reflection of the one universal light, the one God, one source, one power that illuminates us all people, everywhere. The different rooms in the cathedral, each with their distinct stained glass windows, represent the many religions, all of them being lit by the same source, but each religion is but a refraction and a reflection of the one true light. That means that no one can see the source directly. No one can see God directly or fully. God, or ultimate truth, is always veiled, always refracted through the cultures and the languages and the symbols of various communities. It's the same light. It's the same source of love and illumination, even if it looks different as it comes through different windows. But each is an expression. It's an interpretation of the very same source. Now, that's not to say that every religion is right. And that's not to say that every religion is wrong. This is an important point. It's to say that each religion is an attempt to describe and understand and express the one universal source, the one mysterious source of our existence.